Hello everyone, I'm JG and welcome back to Music Forever, where today I'm going to be counting down my top 5 favorite EPs of 2017. Alright guys, in my last countdown video for a year-end list, we did my favorite and least favorite album artworks of the year. So now we're completely done with all the negative lists I have to do here on the channel, worst albums, worst songs of 2017, and things like that. By the way, if you want to check out any of my other year-end lists, there's a playlist linked in the description down below that will take you to all the year-end lists as well as all the other lists that I've done on my channel in the past. So if you want to check that out, please feel free to do so. And if you want to see my other upcoming year-end lists, best album, best songs, things of that sort, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on that content. But today we're talking about my 5 favorite EPs of 2017. Now, the same rules apply to this list as many of my other year-end lists. I had to have, of course, heard the EP to include it here on the list. So, just because your favorite EP isn't on here, it doesn't necessarily mean I didn't like it. Maybe it does mean I wasn't particularly fond of it, but it could also just mean I didn't hear it. Of course, it had to have been released in 2017 at some time, and it's pretty obvious, but for some reason I do need to say that for some people watching. And with that said, yeah, it's just also my own personal opinion. I'm not just saying that these are the 5 best EPs objectively or anything like that. It's completely based on my own personal taste, the EPs I found myself coming back to listen to repeatedly during the year. So, that's really what's influencing my decisions with, making this list here. And if you want to see my thoughts on any of these EPs in further detail, I've definitely reviewed all of these EPs on my channel, either in a full review format and in their own individual video, or in one of my 2 half-year catch-up videos where I talk about projects I didn't have a chance to give a full review to during the year. So if you want to see my reviews for any of these in a longer format, make sure you check out any of those videos because I'm keeping it short here for convenience sake. So with that said, let's get started with my number 5 pick. My number 5 pick is the newest EP from Brockhampton member Matt Champion, Harley. This was released back in March, though I didn't get around to actually listening to this thing until towards the end of this year, just because I wasn't a fan of Brockhampton and their music prior to the release of their Saturation album in June. But going back to this thing on its own is a pretty enjoyable experience. This EP has a lot of, a lot for, an EP, I guess you could say, of just fun, more laid-back, kind of alternative R&B, pop kind of tunes, I guess you could say. And I do kind of like the more laid-back, relaxing feel that you get when listening to this thing. Even though some of these tracks are kind of, shorter, kind of, not exactly snippets, but just shorter versions of other tracks that he's put out before in a longer format before in the past. Just the way they kind of flow on this project makes it just work overall as like an EP experience, which is kind of an odd thing to say, but I just think it works to some extent. And then some of the cuts on here that you don't have in any other form, like Girl Next Door, that I think is just a great tune overall, I would say, probably my favorite on the entire EP. Overall, yeah, this is just a really solid EP overall, a pretty, laid back, more relaxed one. If you're a Brockhampton fan and you haven't checked this out yet, make sure you do so, or if, that genre of music I described before sounds interesting to you, give it a listen. Coming in at number 4 on my list, we have Drive It Like It's Stolen by Injury Reserve. This EP, I just think overall has a lot of very solid songs on it from this group. You have more aggressive tracks, like Boom ×3, or however you say the track name, or just more introspective tracks as well, like North Pole, for example. It covers a lot of ground, this EP, despite the fact that it is, just an EP. It's rather short, not a full-length project, but it does cover a lot of the necessary ground that I feel like you would, kind of expect to hear on like a full-length Injury Reserve project, or just a full-length project in general, I guess you could say. And it doesn't overstay its welcome either, I would say. It's a nice kind of short little, condensed version of what you would expect from Injury Reserve, which I guess is a good thing when you, maybe watch the short, project from them. So I'd have to say this is overall, yeah, a pretty solid EP, and one that if you're an alternative hip-hop, experimental hip-hop fan, you definitely need to check out if you haven't done so already. Next up, on my number 3 spot on the list, it's Cold Dark Place by Mastodon. And this EP is made out of a collection of unreleased tracks, 3 of the 4 being from their 2014 studio album, Once More Round the Sun, and 1 of the 4 tracks being from their most recent studio album released this year, Emperor of Sand. And, while that might just sound like, a collection of unreleased tracks, not really a cohesive effort, it's surprising how, cohesive and, even somewhat conceptual this EP is to an extent, which isn't really something I would expect from, a collection of unreleased tracks, but it really does work here, having this more sad, somber tone to these songs. Even though you can clearly tell that these tracks belong to their respective, albums, recording sessions, just based on the sound of the tracks overall, they all do kind of share a similar, more sad, like I said, somber mood to them that has been explored in Mastodon's albums before, but having this 4-song collection of tracks that kind of had this similar feel to them, especially when you add in the lyrics and the album artwork, which also has a similar, very dark, very moody and subdued kind of color scheme and art design to it. It all just makes for a very cohesive and a very enjoyable EP. It's not something that I feel like was just a collection of 4 unreleased tracks that they slapped together and was like, check this out. And that's not to say that those kind of EPs are bad or anything like that. I enjoy quite a few of them, but this one here, I kind of like how they were able to take something that was leftovers pretty much, but arrange these leftovers into a very cohesive and very nice package overall. If you were a fan of Emperor of Sand, Once More Round the Sun, those albums, or if you're just looking for maybe a more condensed, more sad, somber sounding Mastodon, this is the EP for you. Next up on my list is the Steroids EP by Death Grips that was released earlier this year. And now I initially did this on my channel as a track review just because it was released as like this one massive 20-minute long track. And it really has kind of seemed that the fan base has kind of decided this is more of an EP than like a track or a single or something like that. So, I'm classifying it as an EP now. So yeah, here it is on the list. Because this thing really does kind of, contain all the aspects of Death Grips that I really like. It has a very experimental, aggressive sound to it. I love how it kind of changes up between the different parts of this one long track. Now you could also argue that these different parts are maybe individual songs in this EP that just maybe wasn't split up into individual tracks or something like that. But I like to think of it as just a one-track EP that just goes through all these different phases and things of that sort, just kind of seamlessly, and that's something I do really enjoy about it, how it can, just kind of go all over the place with all these different, ideas and sounds, but still sound very consistent in the, just overall sound of the project overall. It maintains that Death Grips sound that you would kind of expect from Death Grips, and it just makes for a very interesting EP overall. Probably my favorite Death Grips, shorter length project. I know they had that instrumental EP that they put out in 2016 also, which I did enjoy, but this one I do like a lot more just because it just feels like a lot more of a Death Grips project to an extent, and it's also something that they haven't really done before. While they constantly put out material as a group, they haven't really put out a short length kind of EP of just normal material that's not like instrumentals or anything like that. So I'm very happy to see that they were able to kind of step into this new territory and make a great project with it. It's definitely an EP you need to check out if you're a fan of industrial hip hop, experimental hip hop, or just Death Grips in general. It's a pretty great project. And coming in at number 1 on my favorite EPs of the year list, my favorite EP of 2017 is Tupperware Remix Party's Lady World EP. Now, if you saw my 2016 Best Albums of the Year list, the first video I ever uploaded to this channel, Tupperware Remix Party's last EP, Guardians of the Zone, was number 10 on that list. I did really enjoy that EP, and it still probably is my favorite EP from this group. Which will have only put out EPs. I haven't put out a full-length album yet, just for reference for those of you who may not be familiar with the group. Now, of course, if I was to go back into 2016 and, kind of do like a full year-end list kind of thing with favorite songs of the year, favorite EPs, favorite albums like I'm doing this year, obviously that EP wouldn't have been on my Best Albums of the Year list, but it would have been number 1 on my Best EPs of the Year list. just given how, I would have done things a little bit differently then. I'm separating EPs and albums this year just for convenience. And, once again, Tupperware Remix Party topped my favorite EP of the year list. And like I said, I still think Guardians of the Zone is my favorite Tupperware Remix Party EP. This one, though, I think is a close second because I think this is a really solid project overall, and it's one that I definitely gave a lot of re-listens to throughout the year, particularly during the summer, because I think it does kind of have that summer feel to it to an extent. I mean, just looking at the album artwork, I kind of get a summer vibe from it. So, maybe that's why I was attracted to this thing during the summer a fair amount. There's lots of cuts on this thing that I really enjoy, and it just kind of keeps up the whole Tupperware Remix Party, sound to it. Kind of that, kind of 80s throwback with, bits of 80s rock and, bits of funk even in there as well, and electronic sounds. It works very nicely, and this band, like I said, they've only put out EPs, but despite the fact that they have only put out EPs, many of their EPs I feel like benefit from the shorter length just because, they are able to kind of, experiment with different kind of ideas on each EP while kind of releasing them more frequently than studio albums would, because of course it would take more time to release and make a studio album. And here, like I said, this one kind of has a sort of a laid-back, summer-like feel to it. At least that's kind of what I get from listening to it. Of course, that's my own take on it. Feel free to have your own, but yeah, I do kind of like that vibe to it. I do like summer-sounding music, I guess you could say, because I do really like summer. And especially, in the winter when I need to listen to stuff that reminds me of summer, which is a good thing considering this thing was released back in January of 2017. So it's been out for quite a while now. But yeah, it still holds up to this day as I'm recording this. It's a really solid EP. If you're a fan of, like 80s sounding rock or, kind of electronic music, funk, I definitely give this a listen because it encompasses all those sounds with a sort of laid back and very fun feel as well. I don't feel like this project takes itself all too seriously. However, there are bits of, seriousness in there, I guess you could say. It's overall, yeah, just a really solid project in my opinion. And that wraps up my top 5 favorite EPs of 2017. Like I said, this is all my own personal preference based on my own, taste, what I return to a lot during the year, and just pretty much what I really just found myself enjoying to while listening to. So yeah, feel free to have your own list, and in fact, leave it down in the comment section down below because I greatly appreciate seeing it. Make sure you leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel like I said earlier in the video so you don't miss out on my future list coming out for my year-end list. We have the best albums of the year and songs of the year coming up rather soon, and you don't want to miss out on those. Follow me on all the social medias linked in the description down below, as well as check out that playlist with all my pre-existing list videos. Thanks for watching, guys, and stay golden.